Western civilization is moving closer to a point of irreconcilable, unstable equilibrium, as frighteningly increasing numbers of people trust nothing. Media, academia, and especially the governments are no longer held in high esteem. Regaining trust is often impossible after betrayal. However, transparency is essential to any healing process, and that is the essence of the Don Sullivan Show. Please listen to the team explore, probe, and debate cutting-edge science, technology, and computing. Play ball! Welcome again, vast global audience, to the Don Sullivan Show. We, as always, are going to stick within the umbrella, the very large umbrella of science, technology, and computing, discussed on a level that your average American teenager can understand, comprehend, and consume. And as always, we have amazing guests that fit somewhere in that significant umbrella. And today is no exception. We're going to talk about some really interesting and kind of bizarre efforts here overall of camping in the backcountry in extremely difficult conditions. And, we want to get as many people in this audience as possible. We know it's growing exponentially, but we're going to do as much to bring in young people and old people and people who are seasoned, like every one of us except Steve, on the phone, on the actual episode, I should say. And so maybe one day, Steve, we will actually take calls here. But I'm your host, Don Sullivan, and allow me to introduce the now burgeoning institution of the folk hero from New Jersey, Jersey Steve. Say hello, Steve, and talk about our sponsors.
Greetings from the Garden State. Today's episode is brought to you by License Fortress, the industry's first and only software asset management firm to offer both a financial and legal guarantee at its highest level of service. Whether it's Oracle, Microsoft, or VMware, License Fortress helps organizations stay compliant, avoid audits, and save money. You can learn more at licensefortress.com. And please support our producer by visiting axtinc.com. That's AXTINK.com. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and help support his efforts to create humorous animation, as well as run our website, all while researching a cure for baldness.
Steve, every time you talk about that, I think about poor Bill. And he's younger than both of us. And he's dealing with this scourge of baldness. But, he does the Michael Jordan look absolutely perfectly. So, we're okay.
That's a trendy look. I mean, look at The Rock. The Rock, he's a superstar.
Bill does not remind me of The Rock, but okay, we can do that. All right, folks. So today we are recording from way above tree line in the majestic Colorado mountains, where the winter is still in force. Avalanche potential surrounds us, and even the most hardy of mountain animals don't go anywhere near this time of year. Okay, I'm lying, but this is what we're actually going to talk about with an expert on how to survive in these particular locations and particular situations. Wayne Howell is a legendary leader of one of the most renowned outdoor hiking clubs in the world, the Colorado Mountain Club. Wayne leads multiple hikes and climbs really every week with all groups of levels, from the older seasoned over the hill gang to the renowned Bobcats gang who literally runs up mountains under all possible conditions. Wayne is so popular that even the world's most famous podcasters need to join waitlists to get on his roster trips. That like me, I have to join those waitlists all the time. More importantly, Wayne teaches a class called Winter Camping. And today we are going to talk about that class. Do I have it right, Wayne? Do I have your introduction right?
You got that pretty close. I don't think you exaggerated too much, but I'm looking forward to the rest of this discussion.
Yeah. We'll get there. But first, at our lawyer's insistence, we have law firms all over the world who insist that I, of course, go through the classic disclaimer. And so I'm going to have to do that here. So all statements All statements by the host and the guest of the Don Sullivan Show, the personal opinions of the host and the guests, who all agree that the following content is the property of Analytics LLC to be used publicly and exclusively on the Don Sullivan Show and only the Don Sullivan Show. So unless somebody vehemently disagrees, let's get on to having some fun. So, Wayne, let me start off this conversation by asking, why the hell would anyone sleep in the sub-zero temperatures outside? Are you nuts?
So, Don, nuts is one way to look at it. But when you really think about it, another way is, how do you get this kind of experience during the other 3 seasons of the year? You get to go out and enjoy
you don't.
The
it's not
backcountry.
sub-zero, but go ahead.
Sub-zero is one way to look at it as well, too. One of the things is, though, the real enjoyment that I get out of this thing here is I get to go to places that, yes, I can go there in the summer. They can be crowded. They can have other people camping next to me. When I go there in the winter, I'm all alone or with a small group of folks. I get to see a whole bunch of different things that I don't see during the summer. And when it comes right down to it, if you learn how to stay warm in the winter, you can get just as much enjoyment in the winter as you get in the summer.
If you do it right and you don't get yourself in trouble, right? So I'm going to digress a little bit here, but what's something that you've seen in winter camping that you think you would have never seen in the summer or spring or fall or any time that most humans are there?
Yeah, let me give you the perfect example on this one. We were out, small group of us, in the backcountry, but we weren't above tree line. And we were out there doing our little moonlit hike before we go to bed at night. So we were just warming up a little, walking around. And one of the things that we saw kind of skirting across the moonlit sky there was we probably saw 2 or 3 satellites going by. At exactly the same time, we were kind of in this larger field. So we were, at tree line, but it was kind of an open field, and we saw a moose walking across the field. So at the exact same time that we see all this high technology above our heads, we get to see a moose, a really majestic moose walking across a field in the moonlight there. You really don't get that, standing on a corner down in downtown Denver.
So Elon Musk is up there following the moose and you guys at the same time, wanting to know what you both were doing there.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was Elon's moose or Elon's satellites up there, but it was a unique experience.
Do you worry about mean animals walking around out at night, like bears
like
or
squirrels,
animals
Steve?
that hunt at night?
No, they're getting eaten.
Squirrels, vicious squirrels, yeah.
Well, no, the meanest animals are typically the cranky group members that we have that haven't figured out how to stay warm in the winter, and you want to stay away from those folks.
That's why you
want to
go to Wayne's class and go with Wayne. Right, go ahead.
But the other neat thing is, remember, bears are hibernating. And so the really nice thing about winter camping is you don't have to put your food in a canister. You don't have to hang your food. You don't have to deal with it. You actually get to sleep with your food in your tent and not worry about somebody coming in and stealing it on you, other than, a hungry group member that you have with you.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about it. So you kind of have free reign a little bit.
Well, here's the neatest thing about it is, and this happened to me, is when I'm sleeping there, it was probably about 5 degrees below zero when we were sleeping. And I started getting a little bit cold in the middle of the night.
Just a little
bit. Literally, all I did was take out a Snickers bar, which was right next to me in my sleeping system, ate the Snickers bar, and within 15, 20 minutes, I was warm again and back asleep. And so
we're not when you're hungry. That's freaking amazing. Now, if our thermostat drops below 65 in my bedroom, I'm like, oh, where's the extra blanket? It's really chilly in here. How do you get used to -5? That's I'm going out like an astronaut if it's -5 in New Jersey and I have to shovel snow. It doesn't happen very often though, but how do you get used to that where that's not like a big deal?
See, many people, Steve, you included, are thinking about this completely the wrong way. It's not the external temperature that you've got to worry about. It's 98.6. And so your job is to actually try to figure out how to keep your body temperature at 98.6. One of the ways of doing that we all do is we turn up the thermostat in our houses and try to keep ourselves warm. But if you don't have a thermostat and you're outside and you're in the middle of the winter and you say, hey, there's no thermostat here, how in the world am I going to keep my body warm? There is I'll use a big word here, plethora of ways that you can actually keep your body temperature at 98.6. One of the ways is going out and buying like really expensive gear. So you go out and buy.
I've done that before at Wayne's insistence, by the way.
Like going to REI and getting the pricey stuff.
Right. You spend a couple $1,000s on gear, then you get out there, and if the only thing that you're dependent upon is how much gear and how expensive that gear is to keep yourself warm, it ain't going to work. You're still going to get cold. So there's a ton of other ways. And I mentioned just one is when I got cold in the middle of the night, I didn't go and grab another blanket or another sleeping bag. All I did is it cost me like $1.50 for a Snickers bar.
That's
and
inflation,
I warmed myself
by the way,
back up again.
Might be a little pricier now.
Yeah.
So you're saying if my wife complains that it's cold, I should keep a Snickers bar on the bedside table and say, have this Snickers, it'll warm you up. But eating warms you up.
I'm thinking of Snickers commercials all over the place here right now, but they're not a sponsor of the Don Sullivan Show, so we're not going to go there.
They should be. They
should be now. Yes.
Well, Steve, there's actually another important way to stay warm, and it could relate to the point that you just brought up. It's one of the really important things is getting calories into your body, but then getting a lot of body movement as well, too. You want your muscles moving all the time because they're going to generate a lot of heat. So there's a lot of different ways that you can stay warm, and you can actually keep your wife warm, too.
Oh, yeah.
It's true as well. That is certainly true.
Steve,
so
we don't have to talk about that.
If you're out in the cold, you could start running.
There you go. Which one of the things we do.
Get your heart rate up, and that that's certainly true. You see joggers outside. It's like below 30 degrees here in New Jersey. Somebody's jogging early in the morning. I used to do. They don't have a lot on because their body's going to get pretty warm.
And the humidity is different in New Jersey. So once it gets below 50, it's just very unpleasant.
Right. But those joggers are not going to stop and start standing around either. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to stay warm. I would not recommend winter camping in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, though.
Gotcha.
I've seen pictures of them in the Scandinavian countries doing stuff like that to make sure that they tell us Americans we're wimps and so on. But Wayne, I'll tell you, I've been intense, just to be all honest, over decades in Bryce Canyon and Grand Canyon and Yellowstone, where it's been below 30, and it's wake up in the morning and it's snowing or it's snowed on you. I've had a good sleeping bag and I've been totally irresponsible, but oh my God, I was in cold. I wasn't exactly in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge in December of 1944, but still, was I in danger, do you think? Or is it, because I woke up every single time like, oh man, I'm cold, but I did get moving pretty well.
Yeah. So kind of what you experienced is a really important thing is, your body goes through different cycles. And in the middle of the night, the energy in your body goes down really low. So you actually have to find some ways to actually keep yourself warm in the middle of the night.
So does my blood sugar, by the way. But
right. You heard my story about the Snickers bar.
Yeah.
Another thing that I use with my sleeping system is before I go to bed, before I get in that sleeping system, I'll boil water, fill up a Nalgene bottle, close it really tightly, and keep that nice hot Nalgene bottle in the sleep system with me. So whenever I get cold, like I get a cold spot, I'll move it around. And so the sleep system is not just a sleeping bag. It is all the different ways that you actually try to keep warm, as well as what's underneath you, because most people have a really great sleeping bag and they have a really terrible sleep mattress or sleep pad underneath them. and all of that heat that you are generating is being conducted right around into the ground, right on into the snow underneath you. So it's a multifaceted process that you got to go through in order to keep your body temperature at 98.6 throughout the night.
So I really want to know, for the average listener of the Don Sullivan Show out there, other than attending Wayne's class, which I highly recommend, how does the newbie actually start preparing for such an experience?
Yeah. My first recommendation is not to take your summer gear and think you're going to get out in the middle of the dead of winter and have a good winter camping experience.
Think like an Eskimo, at least.
Right. Don't do that. The important thing is, and it's kind of hinted at in this discussion here as well too. It's more a state of mind than anything else. It's not that, hey, I got to go buy all this gear in order to be able to keep myself warm, or I got to turn up the thermostat that doesn't exist in the middle of winter to keep myself warm. It's really trying to figure out all the different ways, and there is a ton of ways to keep your body warm under different conditions, and just as importantly, how not to sweat, because once you start sweating, you actually get in danger of having, as we just mentioned before, hypothermia as well too.
I was going to ask about that. How do you find that balancing point between staying warm and not, oh God, I'm starting to sweat and it's sub-zero?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I get that question a lot. In the winter, you are going to do things at a more leisurely pace, at a slower pace, and you are going to maintain kind of the energy that you are expending at about 60% of your max. So you're not going to go running up a hill. You are not going to go and try to dig huge, deep holes in the snow until sweat is pouring off you. It's going to take longer. But what happens is you got plenty of time, because you get there and what else are you going to do but, try to
Can't turn the
build a
TV
snow
on.
cave. Yeah.
So don't overexert yourself.
Coming aboard, you're not going to be able to see anything there anyway. So
right.
So you're thinking, I don't want to overexert myself and create a situation where I start sweating.
My rule of thumb is never exceed 60%, and never exceeding 60% of the energy that your body produces, you'll not sweat, or you'll sweat to some small degree. And remember, up here in the backcountry in Colorado, we're pretty dry in the winter. Literally, you just unzip your jacket just a little bit and you're going to warm up. You're going to get rid of that perspiration pretty quickly as well, too.
You've already answered this question, I think, in a sort of backhanded kind of way, but apparently you don't have to, although, certainly you've had me do some of this, but you don't have to go spend thousands of dollars to be totally prepared for this. The average person can do it on a reasonable budget.
Yeah, let me tell you, my sleep system consists of a 20-degree ultralight sleeping bag, a 20-degree ultralight quilt, and a fleece sleeping bag liner. I use the 20-degree sleeping bag all 4 seasons of the year. When it gets a little on the warm side of the winter, I use the 20-degree quilt. And then when it gets really warm, I'll just sleep in the sleeping bag liner. So I personally haven't gone out and bought like a minus 10 degree, Western mountaineering, $800 sleeping bag that I only use, a half a dozen trips in the winter. I actually use the same gear that I use in the summer. So you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of expensive and exclusive winter gear, but you got to be smart about the gear that you are using and you're bringing with you.
And that's what Wayne teaches in class. And this is really, really interesting in that it's sort of a back to nature human experience, that we really can function with nature and avoid the creature comforts that we've all become so dependent on, not just used to. If we just simply use our minds and understand it, become a little bit experienced, and take Wayne's class.
Yeah, what should new winter campers look for? How do you know if you're too cold at the point where you start shivering? What should new winter campers keep in their mind about that?
Yeah, that's actually the most important thing that I teach in the class, and I also talk to people when I'm doing like day hikes, snowshoe hikes in the winter as well too. Is the moment you start shivering, you have now started on that hypothermia curve that you don't want to be on. You don't want to slip down that curve into hypothermia, because once you get into, just a little bit lower than shivering, there's no way that your own body is going to generate enough heat for you to be able to warm back up again. So I tell everyone, the moment you start to shiver, that very first moment, you have got to get some food into your body, and you've got to get your muscles moving in your body. Because remember, the primary source of warmth that you have in the winter is your own body. It's not some thermostat on the wall. It's not some big blazing campfire next to you. It is your own body. And so when you start to shiver, eat some, kind of high calorie, easily digestible snacks and start moving around. The other thing that people mention is kind of parts of their body start to get cold. It's like toes is a typical one. Fingers is another typical one. And the moment that they start to get cold, your body isn't on the hypothermia curve, but you are really in danger of either getting frost nip or frostbite on those parts of your body as well.
Which has happened with me. I've gotten frostbite or frost.
Yeah, you gotta address that stuff immediately. So in order to enjoy the winter, you don't want to slip down that hypothermia curve. You are not going to have an enjoyable experience.
All right, Wayne, let's shift a little bit to some of the technical aspects of this, and in the sense of things you have to do. What's it like preparing food in a tent in terms of boiling water or even starting a fire inside a tent? That seems unsafe for the average
really
person.
You think so? You are some smart guy.
Well, I'm trying. I'm learning from you. That's why I go with you. That's why I wait on those wait lists.
So let me put a little context around this for just a second. The kind of winter camping that I'm talking about is not expedition camping. So we are not thinking about way above tree line in alpine environments on the shoulder of some high peak with 70-mile-an-hour winds blazing us and, bending the poles in our tent. I'm talking about at tree line, below tree line, where we're actually going to have some fun. We're not trying to climb a mountain here. We're actually trying to get out in the winter and just enjoy the experience together that we have. So typically, under those conditions, there is absolutely no need to cook in your tent. Yes, it might get a little windy, but hey, remember, we've got some coverage with the trees next to us. Typically, what we'll do is we'll put up a tarp above our kind of kitchen area there. And so my number one recommendation is, if at all possible, avoid, lighting your stove or building a campfire in your tent. It's probably not the best idea.
Well, I know in the hit show Yellowstone, Kevin Costner's Hitman, Yellowstone is really a New Jersey mob show that's got great scenery.
Repositioned.
Sopranos of the West.
It is. It's sorry, you guys. Yellowstone, Kevin, you can be a sponsor too, but this is true. We know that. He started in a tent, a fire. And of course, he did it in about 30 seconds because he was a Superman. They didn't have holes in the roof or anything. And I was wondering where the smoke was going, but it was Hollywood. So this can be done, right? If you need to. And you obviously try not to do it because you're in the more, you're trying to get the experience of being outside. But I would imagine the same principles apply even if you are above tree line or you do encounter unexpected storm circumstances, right?
Right. So first, Don, I'm not going to use as a proof point a TV show. Okay, I'm not sure whether that's the best
wonder why
proof.
not. Come on, it's on the internet. It must be true.
But touching on the more serious point that you're trying to bring up is, one, never start a campfire. period, is just when it comes right down to it, the campfire in your tent and the material in your tent and the stuff that you have in your tent is going to keep you alive throughout the night. You probably don't want that to go up in smoke, number one. Number two is if you really do want to say, okay, I want to boil some water. I want to have a cup of coffee in the morning when I wake up, but I want to boil some water. So think about this. I got a little stove with a big pot sitting on top of it, sitting on snow. So not the most stable conditions in the world to actually, light a fire or cook or boil some water. But the people that I have seen do this, they actually have one special thing associated with their tent, is they don't do it in their tent. They actually do it in their vestibule, kind of outside of the sleeping system that they have in their tent. And they
got like a little foyer for the tent?
Well, no, it's a big foyer. They have unusually large, sometimes custom-made vestibules that literally I've seen the vestibule is larger than the tent itself.
So you can have people over.
Yeah, they have people to visit. They have a couch in there. They have a bar. It's
pretty nice, actually.
It's a wonderful experience in the winter.
That's where the TV comes in for Elon satellites. But
that's right. Yeah. That's where you want Starlink.
Satellite TV. That sounds nice.
Yeah. So they got a lot of room in their vestibule. They got a lot of room in there.
Like a little propane kind of cooker type of deal.
Yeah, a little isobutane stove that they got in there. And they actually craft in the snow kind of a pit in the snow, so they put their feet down in the pit, and they have a little ledge where they put the stove on there, so it's not right up against the top of their tent or the top of their vestibule. And they light the stove and boil some water and have a nice cup of coffee in the morning.
Here's an important question for me. What do you cook on these winter excursions? Are we talking some, gourmet food? What's the menu? If we go out, we
usually bring a chef with us, and we have wonderful, spectacular meals. Now,
Gordon Ramsay is outside, coming in, yelling at you for not actually getting the right temperature on the beef jerky. That's
right. Complaining about the knives that we brought. Yeah, I got it.
What is wrong with you?
No, I let me tell you, I have seen a range from the typical dehydrated meal, which, if you want to keep it simple and keep it really easy, dehydrated meal, but the price you're paying there is you don't get much in the way of flavor, to actually people preparing, like a stew in the winter as well too. The nice thing about being in the winter, another nice thing about being in the winter is you can actually bring stuff and it will stay cold for you. So we actually make a little refrigerator type of thing in the snow, put the stuff that needs to be refrigerated. It'll stay at 32 degrees forever.
The outdoor fridge. Yeah,
that's right. It's all there for the making. Yeah.
So on a kind of different note, Wayne, and I guess a little bit more serious note, you're out and it's 2:00 in the morning and you're 3 miles from the nearest hotel that Steve is staying in, or the nearest car that Steve is actually staying in. Because
I don't sleep in cars. It would be a hotel.
He left there tonight, and he didn't drive out. And you get cold, and you really do get cold, and it happens quickly. And I've been there, and fortunately, I've always been able to move pretty well. And especially if you get hurt and you get cold, what do you do? What's really the emergency situation, or what's the emergency thing that you do to keep yourself from going into that hypothermia state, which is really dangerous? We know that.
Yeah. So let me break that up into two things. Number one is you start getting cold and you try to address it yourself. You have a Snickers bar, you try to move around, you do some isometric exercises in your sleep system. You try all that stuff, but you're still getting cold. The number two part of this is I always recommend that people don't go alone. Because if you go alone,
companions.
Right, the margin for safety is like really, really, really small. And it doesn't take much for you to actually slip down that hypothermia curve in those conditions. Because remember, we're talking about the runners back in New Jersey that are in T-shirts and shorts. The moment they stop is the moment they start getting cold. Well, out in the backcountry, if you injure yourself in some way that you can't now keep your body moving, you're going to be in real trouble. So my number one recommendation for going on a winter camping trip, don't go alone, because you're going to depend on each other. Yeah.
And you could use body heat too, right? Like that to bring up movies again, sometimes, that people crowd together to multiply their heat.
Yeah. So one of the important things is, if somebody I mentioned this before, slipping down the hypothermia curve, you're not going to be able to generate enough heat by your own body. You have to have some external forms of heat to start warming up. Yeah, fire is one of them, but how close can you really get to the fire? Another one, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's, kind of strange, but there are other people there that are actually generating heat that you can actually start using their heat to warm up as well too. So in an emergency situation, we'll definitely consider that as an option to warm someone up. The most important thing with those friends of yours that are going to go with you is to not stay there, but to get you the hell out of there to some higher form of care, because to really warm up with hypothermia, you need to be really in a hospital in order to be able to do it correctly.
What degree does hypothermia start? Like as far as dropping from 98 degrees?
Yeah. So if you're 3 to 5 degrees below that, you're in trouble. And then
okay.
Yeah. It literally, it's not a lot at all. And then the worse it gets, the worse meaning the temperature, your body temperature, the worse you get and the less you're able to do as well too. So when your body starts shivering, it is desperately trying to generate enough heat because its temperature has gone down modestly, a degree or two, and it's starting to shiver. That's the first sign of it. 3 to 5, you are in deep trouble. Beyond that, there's no way you're going to get yourself out of that thing.
Is it true that some people going through hypothermia, for whatever reason, they start feeling hot and they take clothes off?
Yes.
Or is that just something from a movie?
No, what's that called? That's called paradoxical undressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what causes that is your body has been struggling to try to keep your core warm. And that means it has drawn blood, which, remember, is a form of transfer of heat within your body. It has drawn blood from your extremities. When it gets so bad, what happens is that the body no longer constricts the blood vessels, and blood starts now going to your extremities. And believe it or not, that flood of higher temperature blood, which comes from your core, go to your extremities, start to make you feel like you are really hot. And it results in paradoxical undressing. Literally, once your body has done that, it says, I give up. I can't keep the core warm, the most important thing warm. And so you need help desperately fast. Paradoxical undressing is you are in the final stages of hypothermia.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that we know, and it's a strange irony of the human experience, is that water keeps us alive, but water is also something that can kill us. And with cotton, or with any kind of material really, it obviously absorbs and maintains 10 times its weight or something like that in water. And water dissipates heat about 25 times, certainly the Colorado air. What do you do if you get wet at all? Just even if you fall into the snow and you don't, you get snow inside of your clothes. What do you need to do when you get wet? Because you inevitably do. Like we had one of our hikes when we had a few people, I think it was with you, Wayne, but fall through and step into a stream and their feet were drenched.
Yeah. So first of all, I remember when I used to hike decades ago, in blue jeans. And, it'd start to rain, start to get cold. And
not a good idea for the Don Sullivan Show audience. It's not a good idea. No cotton.
Yeah, remember,
go ahead, Wayne.
Cotton, the term we use at the time, cotton is death. So stay away from it when you start getting wet and it starts getting cold. So kind of a simple answer to your more complex question is that if you get wet, you're cold, your clothes get wet, your feet, your socks get wet, take off the wet clothes and put dry clothes on. And I'm going to tell you the real trick, the wonderful thing about winter camping is, when we go camping in the summer, we have this big backpack on our back. and we have to haul all this stuff in. In the winter, you have the joy of experiencing a sled behind you where you can put a ton of gear, a lot of extra gear if you want, and you don't have it on your back. You're not post-holing in the snow. You're gliding over the snow, pulling the sled behind you. And so I always bring extra insulation, extra clothing, not only for myself, but the other people on the trip that I go with, just in case somebody gets into that situation of
especially
get
socks,
those wet clothes
right?
off of them and put dry clothes on them.
Especially socks. Anything that I go on that's more than a couple of miles, even in the summer, even down in the Grand Canyon when it's 110 degrees, I have an extra pair of socks with me just in case.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Really. And Don, you mentioned, kind of getting your foot wet through, some extreme or something like that where you've gone down through the snow. The boots I wear in the summer are not my regular summer, or excuse me, in the winter are not my regular summer hiking boots. I actually have a pair of 30-year-old Sorel boots. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. That they are waterproof. So yes, even when I step into a stream, my feet are not going to be wet. They're not the greatest hiking boots in the world, but remember, the whole time you're doing is wearing a pair of snowshoes anyhow, or skis.
So, Steve, your Converse Chuck Taylor's not going to work.
Yeah, the Converse high tops
when you come
don't
out
cut
here,
it.
Not going to work. All right, I know
We'll leave those back.
They're back in style, but not going to happen. Okay?
We'll leave those back at the Four Seasons.
Yes, I think that's right.
So, do you sleep in? Sorry, Don. Just out of curiosity, we were talking about clothes. Do you sleep in long johns? We talked about the sleep system, but what do you wear to go to sleep?
Yeah, so let me tell you 2 points about that. I have jackets on, and then I have an insulation layer on, and then I have typically a pair of kind of outer pants. They're sometimes ski pants, but they're winter hiking pants. Not a lot of high insulation because I wear long johns. When I go to sleep in the evening, kind of that clothing throughout the day gets a little bit moist. They get some snow on it, gets a little bit moist. So the trick that I do is take off the pants and take off the insulation layer and actually put them between my inflatable, kind of blow up sleeping pad. And I have a closed cell foam kind of accordion pad below that. I put that between them. By the morning, my own body heat is going to warm them up and they are going to be largely dry. So I can wake up to kind of warmer, drier clothes that I'll put back on. I have a pair of fleece, kind of fleece jogging or running pants that I'll put on kind of over my long johns. And then depending upon what the temperature is, I may put, kind of a fleece upper or not. Most of the time I don't have to do that. And that's more than enough to keep me warm. I do the same thing with my socks because they get a little bit moist during the day. I'll put them between the two sleeping pads. And literally when I wake up in the morning, they will be pretty dry and pretty warm. So you don't have a pair of frozen pants that you have to get into in the morning.
I've done that with shoveling snow and it's not fun. That's a neat trick.
Yeah, it's back to how we started this conversation is how are all those different ways that you have to stay warm? That's yet again another one of those little tricks that says, okay, I wake up in the morning and I don't mind putting on the clothes that I had on yesterday because they're largely warm and largely dry.
So Wayne, tell us, without naming names, because I'm sure there's plenty of them, you've had certainly exposure to lots and lots of people that have done a lot of amazing things, and you yourself have as well. But tell us about one or two incidents that were particularly precarious that you were able to use your immense skills. And I'll tell the audience of the Don Sullivan Show that Wayne is incredibly well prepared and cautious. It's one of the reasons why he's so popular, and even famous podcast hosts like me have trouble getting on his hikes. That a few months ago, we were, and Wayne, we'll have you back on another Don Sullivan Show to talk about how avalanches work in Colorado, if you have not been turned off completely by it yet. But we were 100 yards from the specific point where we were trying to get to to actually see the overlook to this wonderful lake. And Wayne said, that's enough. We're going to turn around. There were some other people that were jumping up and down in certain areas that probably they shouldn't have been. And we said, nope, we're going to turn around because this is dangerous right here. So I really have to applaud Wayne and the philosophy of the Colorado Mountain Club because of the level of preparation, because of the level of expertise and the cautiousness and the real leadership. But I really want to know, and I don't mean to digress into that, but let's just for the audience, you got a couple of situations that were particularly precarious and interesting, and at this point, maybe even entertaining.
Yeah. So, Don, I'm happy you asked me that question because there's actually a couple things that I want to mention about that. First of all, on all the trips that I do, whether they're summer backpack, whether they're winter camping, whether they're a day hike in the winter, I've always got like two simple objectives for the trip. Two simple objectives. Number one, the most important, is that the entire group is safe. Number two is the entire group has some fun. And so those will dictate the decisions that I make or make with the group with regard to what we do. And so what you experienced there when we came into some higher avalanche risk areas is that area was going to be there in the future as well, too. So there was no need for us to traverse into a higher avalanche risk area because it violated principle number one, which is, the group was probably not going to be safe enough. And so in the winter, what happens is that safety margin narrows dramatically. You can make a lot of mistakes in the summer and still get away with it. In the winter, that much narrower safety margin. So you have to be, one, better prepared. You have to expect more. And then you have to be actually a bit more on the conservative side when you're making some decisions. Now, you mentioned kind of having an incident out in the backcountry. There's another class that we have in the Colorado Mountain Club called Backcountry Incident Management. It's a really wonderful class that has to do with how do you manage if somebody becomes injured. And it's not just the first aid portion of this, but how do you manage the group that you're with? How do you manage the first aid people and the patient that needs special attention? What happens is if the weather starts to turn on you, what do you do with regard to gear? And then in addition, how do you get help to that person as well, too? So there's a whole class that we literally teach that process, which we call backcountry incident management. And luckily for me, I have been cautious enough and made kind of more cautious decisions that we've never had a real major incident. One incident that I did have, which was by far the trickiest one I ever had, was I was hiking with my wife. And my wife, unfortunately, tripped and fell on some rocks. And what happened was that she had cut her temple, cut her cheek. So there was, a healthy amount of blood going on. I was a little bit worried about concussion. And then she was also kind of complaining about her wrist as well, too. So I was concerned that she might have injured her wrist as well, too. What happens is because it was unavoidable. People trip, people fall on rocks. It's not like it could have been avoided. But what happens is because I had kind of a skill set in order to be able to manage that, we got her patched up. I checked her for, and it was just her and I checked her for concussion. I actually splinted her wrist because she actually ended up breaking her wrist. But the most important thing is, one, as I stayed calm. And so you have to really stay calm in these situations. You have to depend upon your training that you got. And then the third thing is I actually enlisted the help of another hiker that was hiking along there and kind of looked at us and says, okay, yes, I do need some help. Can you get over here and help me? So don't actually be reticent about asking for help in the backcountry. Oftentimes you'll see a hiker kind of not feeling so well, and they won't be asking for help. They'll refuse help, and wrong thing to do. And so kind of incidents in the backcountry have been rare for me. But when they do happen, as long as you have a modicum of skills, you can manage your way through it. We've got my wife back to the trailhead. It was about a half-mile hike back to the trailhead, got her into some urgent care and, got a cast put on and everything like that. And she's just fine now.
It's amazing the simple things that can happen. Excuse me again. about a year ago, I fell like I tend to do, and I tore off a large percentage of a thumbnail. And lo and behold, there apparently is an artery underneath there. And this thing was spurting out blood. And it was amazing how much. And I was with a CMC leader in one of the Lower Colorado Pueblo group, actually. And she was really good. She just wrapped it all up. And I wound up going into a urgent care later, and all was fine, and it grew back. But it was really amazing how something, I really didn't get hurt. I obviously hurt, but I didn't really get hurt. But it was just spurting out blood. So the simplest things that you wouldn't know can really lead to a difficult situation if you're not calm and prepared and humble, as I have noticed you are in such profound ways. I thank you for that and my experiences personally and so on. But let me end this show, and Steve, you can chime in here. Wayne, particularly when it comes to the winter camping, which I think most of the audience is not familiar with, would never even consider, or maybe, and hopefully after listening to this episode all around the globe, that people will reconsider such experiences, because it does really expose you to a different part of your human past that you really aren't familiar with in our modern day, with modern day conveniences. What do you see as the psychological, spiritual benefits for it? I mean, I may have just answered the question with the way I've asked the question, but is there anything else you can add to that?
Yeah. Kind of 2 or 3 things. Number one is get a little bit of training, get a little bit of experience at doing this, and you have an opportunity to be able to go out and experience something that you don't normally do. And winter camping is different than camping in the summer as well too. And you get out there, and I gave you the example of seeing the satellite and seeing the moose at the exact same time. But that's just one thing. Is the other night we were actually winter camping, and we went out and looked at the stars, and we spent probably 45 minutes just looking up at the stars, trying to figure out which stars we were looking at and trying to figure out where they were in the sky. And everything in the winter goes a little bit slower. You set up camp a little bit slower. You actually eat a little bit slower. And so when you go out there and you spend 45 minutes looking at the sky, well, I never do that on my back porch. First of all, I can barely see the sky because I have so much light pollution. But you get back out there, everything gets a little bit slower. And when it gets a little bit slower, you get to have some experiences that in our fast-paced world that we all live in all the time, you miss.
It's sort of the ironic inverse of stopping and smelling the roses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're going to have to smell really hard to smell the roses.
But it's the same point.
But that's right. It's the exact same thing. You do everything slower. And when you do everything slower, you got more time to think about things. Remember, at night, the sun will go down in the winter, probably at 6 o'clock, give or take, and comes up about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Hell, you got a lot of time in your sleep system as well too. Now I use it to get about 10 or 11 hours of sleep, which I never do when I'm home. And I really, really enjoy that opportunity to catch up on my sleep.
So you don't even need medication for that?
No medication, no nothing. And just the occasional Snickers bar, and you'll make it through the night just successfully. But the whole idea here is to experience something different. And what I notice is that the time scale that you're experiencing that at is very different. And it's worth going out, getting a little bit of training, getting a little bit of experience, and having a kind of open enough mind to say, yeah, I can enjoy myself out here and have a really different kind of experience than I have the other 3 seasons of the year.
So, folks, Wayne is not only an amazing leader that brings, as he has stated as his goals, safety and fun, and more importantly, I think from the perspective of what we're talking about here, incredibly diverse set of experiences throughout the entire year. he also brings all kinds of interesting treats for his groups. The North Korean licorice is the most famous throughout the wonderful Colorado Mountain Club. And if you do get to Colorado, you plan on moving to Colorado, or if you don't, and you just want to come on vacation and you don't know what to do, get a membership to the Colorado Mountain Club. It's not expensive, and you can also get temporary connections so that you can go on some trips. It's an amazing experience. I started with the Colorado Mountain Club in the 90s, and there are certain people who changed my life literally, and that's the reason why I transitioned from being an outgoing distance runner in the 90s to someone who would much prefer to be in the mountains and climb mountains all over the world as I have. Spent far too much time in Silicon Valley getting fat and out of shape in the interim. But now I'm back to doing what I should do in a much more healthy fashion. Steve, that's a message to you as you're in the early stages of your career. But Wayne, again, I thank you. I thank you for being on this episode. I, again, want to get you back on to talk about the science of avalanches, which is absolutely fascinating in so many different ways from a really purely scientific perspective. And if you haven't been turned off and you see this actual episode and you like it, maybe the folks in the Colorado Mountain Club that you pass it to will like it as well. And we'll get on and have another episode with you. And I will be on as many hikes as I can get through the waiting list on with you. I assure you through the summers as we go along. And again, I thank you. Steve, you got anything else to add to this episode before we close it out?
Absolutely. It sounds like such a unique opportunity, not just to kind of strip yourself of modern conveniences, but get away from the hustle and bustle and all the distractions and just kind of be the individual with nature. It sounds really cool. And I will say that both Wayne and I agreed that we would rather go winter camping than go in your basement because of the brown recluse spiders.
They're here. They're I can't get rid of them. I out in western Colorado there are black widows, and I took a picture of one of them the other day. Maybe I'll show that. But yeah, there are brown recluses all over the place here. So yes, that's probably true. I don't sleep down here. But anything else, Wayne, to add to my
guys? I had a great time, and I really do encourage people that if you're interested in getting out there and trying winter camping, do not be afraid of it, but get some training in order to be able to actually get out there and enjoy yourself.
All right. Thanks a whole bunch, Wayne. And folks, thank you all for listening. And please tune in and download as many episodes as possible as we span the globe and talk about all subjects that are science, technology, and computing. And remember, folks, in life, all at-bats are situational. And thank you for listening.